What if the most significant global shift of our lifetime isn't happening in Washington or Brussels? What if it's being driven by a group of nations that not long ago most people had never even heard of? Hi everyone, I'm George, a PhD economist, and this is the story of how a simple investment acronym, born in a bank's research paper, grew into a powerful challenge to the post-war world order. It's the story of how an alliance representing well over 40% of the world's population is methodically building a new economic and political reality, piece by piece. This isn't a prediction of the future. It's actually happening right now, and by the end of this video, you will understand just how profound this change is and what it means for the world as we know it. Before that though, take a moment and subscribe for weekly financial consulting and macroeconomics updates. 93% of you, my dear viewers, are non-subscribers to this channel, and I know you can find some value from this growing community of curious minds. For the better part of a century, the world has played by a specific set of rules. After World War II, a global order was established with the United States and its Western allies in the driver's seat. Key institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund became the architects of global finance. The US dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency, an incredible position of power that meant everything from oil to coffee was priced and traded in dollars. For many years, this system delivered a degree of stability. But over time, dissatisfaction started to build up. For many developing nations, often called the Global South, this order felt less like a partnership and more like a club that weren't invited to join. They saw a system that seemed to favor the interests of its wealthy creators, often attaching strict conditions to loans while offering little say in major decisions. Institutions that were supposed to serve the globe were criticized for not reflecting the world's actual demographics and economic power. Decisions made in Western capitals could have huge consequences for billions of people who had no real voice at the table. This growing disconnect wasn't just a vague feeling, it was sharpened by financial crises, unilateral sanctions that could cripple economies overnight, and a sense that the benefits of globalization weren't being shared fairly. New economies were rising, and the post-war framework was starting to look outdated. A critical mass of nations began to question the status quo, not with loud confrontation, but with a simple, powerful question: is there another way? The story of BRICS doesn't start in a presidential palace. It begins, of all places, in a 2001 research paper from Goldman Sachs. An economist named Jim O'Neill was searching for the next big thing in the global economy. He pinpointed four rapidly growing markets: Brazil, Russia, India, and China, which he argued would become major engines of global growth. He bundled them together under a catchy acronym, BRIC. For years, that's all it was, a label for investors, a shorthand for market potential. The four nations themselves had little in common. They were spread across the globe with vastly different governments and histories. The idea of them forming a genuine political group seemed like a fantasy. But the name stuck because it captured a shift that was already happening. China was becoming the world's factory. India was emerging as a tech powerhouse. Russia was reasserting itself with its energy wealth, and Brazil was a growing agricultural and industrial force. While Western commentators saw four separate countries, the leaders of these nations saw a shared reality. They were all major players who felt their weight wasn't reflected in the existing world order. In 2006, the foreign ministers of the BRIC countries met informally at the UN General Assembly. It was a small step, but a pivotal one. 3 years later, in 2009, they held their first formal summit in Russia. The acronym had officially jumped from an investment paper into the world of geopolitics. Then in 2010, the group invited South Africa to join. The S, the capital S, was added, and BRICS was born. The message was clear. This was no longer just about economics. It was about building a platform for influential nations outside of the West. The creation of BRICS wasn't just for show, it was a direct response to the perceived unfairness of the Western-led system. But it wasn't just about getting a seat at the old table. It was about building a new one. The why behind the alliance really boils down to three main goals: challenging financial dominance, demanding representation, and charting a new economic path. At its heart, BRICS was designed to be a counterweight to the economic and political dominance of the West. For countries like China and Russia, this was a strategic goal to resist what they show as containment. For India, Brazil, and South Africa, it was more about creating a multipolar world, a system where power is more spread out, not concentrated in one group of nations. They argued for a world where multiple power centers could coexist and compete on a more level playing field. Second, the group wanted a bigger voice in how the world is run. For decades, the leadership of the World Bank and the IMF was informally reserved for an American and a European. Voting power was heavily skewed towards the G7 nations, even as the economic might of countries like China and India was surging. BRICS argued this was undemocratic and out of touch with the 21st century. They pushed for reforms, and when those reforms didn't come fast enough, they decided to take matters into their own hands. And this leads to the third and maybe most practical goal: creating an alternative financial system. The members felt dangerously exposed to the US dollar and Western financial networks. The use of sanctions as a foreign policy tool was a constant reminder of their vulnerability. So they set out to build concrete institutions that would give them more control over their own economic futures. The idea was to create a parallel system, one that could operate alongside the old one, offering new options for trade and finance, free from the political strings they felt were often attached. A vision for a new world order doesn't mean much without the tools to build it. The BRICS nations knew this and moved from talk to action, constructing the key pillars of their alternative system. The bloc's biggest achievement so far is the New Development Bank, or the NDB, which is headquartered in Shanghai. Launched in 2015, the NDB was created as a direct alternative to the World Bank. Its mission is to fund infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS countries and other emerging economies. What makes it different is its structure. The founding members have equal voting rights, a clear departure from the Bretton Woods institutions. The NDB is also focused on providing more of its loans in the local currencies of its members. This is a crucial step in reducing reliance on the US dollar and shielding developing nations from currency swings. Alongside the NDB, the bloc created the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, or the CRA. Think of it as a financial safety net, a pool of over $100 billion designed to help member countries facing financial shocks like a currency crisis. It's an alternative to the IMF bailout system, which often comes with strict austerity measures. The CRA gives members a financial cushion without forcing them to accept outside conditions. The third piece is the push for de-dollarization, or the effort to rely less on the US dollar for global trade. BRICS countries are increasingly settling trade among themselves using their own currencies. For instance, a large share of Russia-China trade is now done in rubles or yuan. This trend has sped up as Western sanctions on Russia show the risks of being tied too closely to the dollar system. To make this easier, Members are exploring alternative payment systems like BRICS Pay to bypass the SWIFT network that handles most international bank transfers. While a single BRICS currency is still a distant dream that we will talk about in the next video, these practical steps are slowly chipping away at the dollar's dominance within their sphere of influence. If the original 5 BRICS nations represent the significant change, the recent expansion has turned that change into a seismic event. In 2024, the bloc grew significantly, welcoming Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Saudi Arabia is cooperating but hasn't officially announced itself as a member. In early 2025, the Southeast Asian powerhouse Indonesia joined as well, bringing the total to 11 members. The bloc also created a partner country category, offering a pathway to membership for nations like Vietnam, Nigeria, Kazakhstan, and Thailand. This expansion dramatically changes the scale of BRICS. The group's share of the world's population is now over 45%, with some estimates putting it to near 55%. If partner countries are included, of course. Its collective slice of global GDP, measured in purchasing power parity, has surpassed that of G7, standing at around 40 to 44%. The implications are huge. The inclusion of major energy players like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE means the expanded BRICS now accounts for about 42% of global oil production. This gives the bloc tremendous influence over global energy markets. Adding Egypt with its control over the Suez Canal and Ethiopia, one of Africa's fastest growing economies, solidifies the group's strategic reach. Indonesia's membership connects the bloc to the vibrant economies of Southeast Asia. This is no longer just a club of just large emerging markets. It's a sprawling coalition of the global south. But this rapid growth comes with challenges. A bigger group means it's harder to agree on things. The original BRICS already had frictions, especially the border disputes and strategic rivalry between India and China. The expansion adds new complexities, bringing regional rivals like Iran and Saudi Arabia into the same room. Managing these competing interests will be the biggest test of the bloc's future. Can a group this big and diverse truly act with a single purpose? The rise of BRICS isn't just an abstract geopolitical game. It has real consequences for the global economy, international politics, and people all over the world. The most profound implication is the world is moving faster towards a truly multipolar reality. The era of a single dominant superpower is fading away, replaced by a more complex landscape with multiple competing centers of power. This could lead to a more fragmented world with rival trade blocs and technology standards. Imagine a world with not one internet but several walled off from one another, or global supply chains rerouted based on political loyalty instead of efficiency. The challenge to the US dollar is another critical issue. A gradual decline in the dollar's global role could have major effects on the United States, potentially leading to higher borrowing costs. For the rest of the world, it could mean less exposure to US policy and sanctions, but also more currency instability as a new balance is found. This shift is also reshaping global trade. We are already seeing trade within the BRICS bloc growing. As these nations strengthen their economic ties, they may prioritize buying and selling among themselves over their traditional partners in the West. This could force companies to navigate a much more complex world, aligning their operations with different economic ecosystems. For consumers, this could eventually affect the price and availability of everything from electronics to coffee. Finally, the rise of BRICS puts pressure on existing institutions like the UN, the IMF, and the World Bank to reform. With a powerful alternative now in place, the incentive for these legacy institutions to become more inclusive is stronger than ever. This competition could spark positive change. On the other hand, though, It could lead to gridlock on critical global issues like climate change as the world struggles to find common ground between rival camps. The biggest challenge, as I said before, is internal. BRICS is an incredibly diverse group, which is both a strength and a weakness. It includes democracies like Brazil, India, and South Africa, alongside authoritarian states like China, Russia, and Iran. These different political systems can lead to clashing priorities. The strategic rivalry between China and India is the most serious fault line. The two Asian giants are locked in a border dispute and are competing for influence across Asia, making deep strategic trust very, very difficult. Economic imbalances are another major issue. China's economy is larger than all other BRICS members combined. This creates a huge power disparity, fueling fears among other members that the bloc could become a vehicle for Chinese influence rather than a partnership of equals. They risk simply swapping a dependency on the West, on Washington, for a dependency on Beijing. On top of that, the bloc's institutions are still very young. The New Development Bank is a success, but it's still dwarfed by the financial power of the World Bank and the IMF. Building effective, large-scale institutions is a slow and expensive process. And for now, the BRICS infrastructures can't truly rival the established Western-led system. Externally, the bloc faces significant pushbacks from the West, particularly the United States, of course. Many countries interested in BRICS also have deep economic and security ties with the West, meaning the US again, that they don't want to risk. This forces them into a delicate balancing act, trying to get the best of both worlds without being forced to choose a side. The journey for BRICS is uphill, filled with internal contradictions and external pressure. How it navigates these challenges will determine if it can truly transform the 21st century. This global power shift is one of the most important stories of our time. If you're finding this analysis valuable, take a moment and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It's the best way to support what I do here and make sure you don't miss my next deep dive into the forces shaping our world. Also, you help these videos spread out. So let's recap. From a 4-letter acronym in an investment paper to a global alliance shaking the world order, the rise of BRICS has been remarkable. It represents the culmination of decades of shifting economic power and a growing desire for a voice from the global south. This isn't just a talking shop. It's a deliberate project to build a new infrastructure for trade, finance, and governance. Through institutions like the New Development Bank and the steady push toward de-dollarization, the BRICS nations are laying the foundations for a multipolar world. A world where Washington isn't the only capital that makes the rules. The bloc's recent expansion has supercharged this process, bringing a huge portion of the world's population under its umbrella and giving it major influence over global energy. Yet, the path ahead is full of obstacles. Deep internal divisions, especially the rivalry between China and India, threaten to undermine the group's unity. China's sheer economic size raises fair questions about equality within the bloc, and the external pressure from a wary West is intense. The rise of BRICS is arguably the biggest geopolitical story of the 21st century so far. It signals a fundamental reordering of global power, and we are living through the transition. The outcome is still unwritten. Will BRICS forgo a more balanced global system, or will its internal conflicts cause it to fracture, leading to a more chaotic and divided world? One thing is certain. The old order is changing, and what comes next is being built right before our eyes. But I want to know what you think. Is the rise of BRICS a positive development for the world, or does it pose a threat to global stability? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I release the next video. You can check out other deep dives on the screen now for more content on our shifting world. I will see you in the next one on Tuesday for an exploration of how you can take advantage of the rise of BRICS economies. See you all. Bye bye.